Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. In today's episode, we're climbing aboard a rather unusual form of travel. Not airplanes, not cruise ships, not those commuter trains that leave you knackered after a long day at work. We're talking about luxury trains. Those gleaming, nostalgic carriages that glide across continents like moving hotels, where the journey is not an inconvenience but the entire point. So, make yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and imagine you're stepping into a wood panel carriage, soft lamps glowing, white tablecloths perfectly pressed. Outside, the landscape is slipping by. Inside, someone has already taken your luggage and said, "All sorted, sir or madam." Today, we'll explore how luxury trains reinvent long-distance travel, why people are so keen on these meticulously curated journeys, and what they reveal about our changing relationship with time, comfort, and even status. Let's set off. First of all, what actually is a luxury train? It's not simply a standard train with slightly nicer seats and somewhere to plug in your phone. A true luxury train is designed to feel like a grand hotel from the moment you step onto the platform. You're greeted by uniformed staff, often in old-fashioned caps and immaculate jackets. There may be live music in the station. Your suitcase, which you secretly overpacked, disappears as if by magic, to reappear later in your cabin. The carriages often have a strong historical or theatrical flavor. Polished brass, dark wood, velvet curtains, and those tiny lamps fixed to tables in the dining car. It's all very deliberate, of course, but the idea is that you feel transported not only in space but also in time. Now, you might be thinking, fair enough. It sounds charming, but why would anyone choose a train over a quick flight? To understand that, we need to go back just briefly to the so-called golden age of rail travel. Before commercial aviation became widespread, long-distance trains were the height of international glamour. Famous routes linked major European capitals, crossing borders overnight while passengers dined on multi-I-course meals served on actual china. In Britain, named trains such as the Flying Scotsman captured the public imagination. In continental Europe, certain trains acquired almost mythical status, associated with spies, aristocrats, and the occasional fictional murder mystery. Luxury trains today are, in many ways, an attempt to revive that sense of drama and occasion. But they're not just nostalgic replicas. They're also very modern businesses, competing in a world where most people can fly almost anywhere relatively cheaply in a matter of hours. So, how do they make a long journey appealing when speed is no longer their strong point? Let's look at 3 key strategies: aesthetic theater, choreographed time, and curated social space. First, aesthetic theater. Luxury trains lean heavily into visual storytelling. Designers obsess over details most commuters barely notice. The curve of a chair back, the exact shade of green on the walls, the pattern on the carpet. It's not enough for the carriage to look nice. It has to evoke a specific emotional world. You might have a train that channels 1,920 seconds glamour, all Art Deco flourishes and geometric mirrors, as if you've wandered onto the set of an old black and white film. Another might highlight regional craftsmanship, with local woods, woven textiles, and artworks that reflect the landscape you're traveling through. Every corridor, every compartment, every tiny sign is part of an immersive design language. The idea is that when you share a photo of the journey, people recognize immediately. That's not just any train, that's a particular iconic experience. One British designer who has worked on these trains described them as moving stage sets. The outside world changes constantly, but the interior remains consistent, like a film in which the scenery rolls by and the main character is you. Secondly, choreographed time. On a modern high-speed service, time is something to be conquered. The faster, the better. You race through the countryside at 300 kilometers an hour, barely glancing out of the window. If the train is even 10 minutes late, there's uproar on social media. On a luxury train, time is not something to beat. It's something to inhabit. The timetable is not just about getting from A to B, it's about creating a rhythm to the day. Breakfast might be served in 3 relaxed sittings, rather than being shoved at you in a paper cup. A proper lunch might be accompanied by views of mountains or vineyards. In the late afternoon, there could be tea in the observation car, followed by a short stop at a picturesque station where you can stretch your legs. What's fascinating is how carefully the operators plan this choreography. They consider when the sun will rise, where the most spectacular scenery lies along the route, and which sections of track are, frankly, a bit dull and better suited to nighttime. In other words, they edit your journey like a film editor. The boring bits are trimmed, the dramatic bits are placed at just the right moments. As a result, your experience of time becomes strangely elastic. Hours can drift past while you're chatting in the lounge car, and then, all of a sudden, you realize you've traveled hundreds of kilometers without feeling rushed once. Thirdly, curated social space. Ordinary trains are often spaces of avoidance. You shove your bag on the rack, put your headphones in, and do everything you can to avoid eye contact with fellow passengers. You're simply coexisting until you can escape. Luxury trains flip this on its head. They are designed, quite deliberately, to encourage interaction. The lounge car might have deep armchairs arranged in small clusters, making it easy to strike up conversation with the couple opposite, or the solo traveler reading a rather enormous novel. There may be a pianist playing standards, gently nudging people to gather around the bar. Because passengers have opted into a shared niche experience, there's already a sense of camaraderie. You all chose this slightly extravagant way of traveling. In a way, you're in on the same secret. Staff play a crucial role too. They are not merely serving food and checking tickets, they are social facilitators. A well-timed comment, an introduction, a knowing smile can transform a carriage full of strangers into a congenial little community, even if only for a night or two. Now, let's talk about luxury. It's rather tempting to dismiss these trains as the preserve of the wealthy, an indulgence for people with too much time and money on their hands. And to be blunt, tickets can be eye-wateringly expensive. You might look at the prices and think, blimey, for that I could buy a small car. But what's interesting is how the notion of luxury itself is changing. For much of the 20th century, luxury often meant excess. More gold, more marble, more chandeliers, larger suites, greater quantities of champagne. In travel, it meant first-class cabins, private butlers, and as many courses as you could possibly eat. Contemporary luxury, however, is increasingly about something else: carefully curated scarcity. On a luxury train, you are being protected from the constant connectivity and decision fatigue of everyday life. Your phone signal may be patchy, Wi-Fi, if it exists at all, might be politely unreliable. There is no infinite menu. Meals are set, seasonal, and explained to you. You're not bombarded with choices. Instead, your day is gently structured. Paradoxically, what you're paying for is not abundance, but absence. The absence of noise, of chaos, of having to plan everything yourself. Someone else behind the scenes has already done that. Your job is to be present. This is luxury, not as ostentatious display, but as sanctuary. However, we can't ignore the elephant in the carriage. These experiences are, by definition, exclusive. There are only so many berths, only so many seats in the dining car, and the price point places them out of reach for the vast majority of travelers. So, what do these trains mean? Culturally, if most people will never set foot on one. In a way, they serve as a kind of fantasy, even for those who never buy a ticket. They appear in films, adverts, and glossy magazine spreads as symbols of a slower, more elegant world, in stark contrast to budget flights and low-cost carriers where you're lucky if you can recline your seat by more than 3 millimeters without starting an argument. They also highlight a broader tension in modern travel, the clash between speed and experience. For years, the narrative was simple. Faster was better. High-speed rail, budget airlines, instant online booking. Get there quickly, cram in as many destinations as possible, and post the photos as proof. The destination was everything. The journey was a necessary nuisance. Luxury trains quietly undermine that story. They suggest that the journey itself can be the main event. and that there is value in not rushing, in letting landscapes unfold at a human pace. You might say they are the physical embodiment of what some people now call slow travel, a movement that urges us to travel less frequently, but more thoughtfully, staying longer in each place and paying attention to how we get there. From an environmental point of view, this is quite an interesting twist. Conventional wisdom would say that trains are automatically better for the planet than planes, and in broad terms, that's true. Rail travel tends to have a lower carbon footprint per passenger, especially when powered by electricity from cleaner sources. But luxury trains complicate the picture. They often run with fewer passengers per carriage, offer more space per person, and sometimes cover long distances on routes that are far from efficient in purely economic terms. There may be diesel locomotives on certain stretches, elaborate kitchens using imported ingredients, and all the associated infrastructure of high-end tourism. So, while they might be greener than private jets, they're not necessarily the most environmentally perfect form of rail travel. What they can do, however, is act as ambassadors for rail itself. By making trains aspirational again, they remind people that railways can be far more than just a way of getting to work. Some travelers who fall in love with the experience of a luxury train might later opt for more modest night trains or daytime services rather than flying short haul. In that sense, they can help shift cultural attitudes. Let's come back for a moment to Britain and the way British culture shapes our expectations of train travel. The British have a complicated relationship with trains. On the one hand, we are quietly proud of having been early pioneers of the railway. We have iconic steam locomotives, children's stories about friendly engines, and entire heritage lines run by volunteers who spend their weekends covered in soot and absolutely loving it. On the other hand, we moan about delays, cancellations, and ticket prices with almost athletic dedication. It's a national pastime. If there's a signal failure on a rainy Monday morning, you can be sure it will be discussed at length in offices and pubs across the land. This everyday experience of slightly chaotic, overcrowded trains makes the idea of a serene, punctual, beautifully catered luxury journey feel almost comically distant. It's as if someone took your daily commute and said, "Right, we're going to do the complete opposite now." And yet, there is a deep cultural memory of trains as something grand, thanks in part to literature and television. From Agatha Christie mysteries to period dramas, trains are often where the crucial conversations take place, where secrets are revealed and destinies decided. Luxury trains tap into that shared imagination. Even if you've never traveled on one, you recognize the visual language instantly. The narrow corridor, the sliding compartment door, the whistle on the platform as the train pulls away. Now, what does all of this mean for you as an advanced learner of English? Listening to discussions like this one, with layered ideas and nuanced language, helps you develop the kind of comprehension you need for academic lectures, professional meetings, or thoughtful media like a BBC Radio 4 documentary. You've heard a range of vocabulary around design, hospitality, culture, and travel. Words like nostalgic, ostentatious, curated, elastic sense of time, and expressions such as the elephant in the carriage, moving stage sets, and ambassadors for rail. You've also heard informal British expressions like spot on, blimey, all sorted, and knackered, which add color and authenticity to spoken English. To make the most of this episode, you might like to do the following. First, listen once without pausing, simply to absorb the overall message. Then, listen again, pausing to note down new phrases or idioms. Ask yourself, in what situations could I use them? Are they formal, informal, or somewhere in between? Next, summarize the main argument of this episode in your own words. Try to include some of the more sophisticated vocabulary. Finally, reflect on your own travel experiences. Have you ever taken a journey where the process of getting there mattered more than the destination? How might you describe that in English? As we pull into the final station of today's journey, let's come back to our original question. How do luxury trains turn long journeys into moving hotels? They do it through design that tells a story, through a careful choreography of time that makes slowness feel indulgent rather than irritating, and through the creation of social spaces where strangers can meet, talk, and share the view. In an age obsessed with speed and efficiency, they stand as elegant, slightly eccentric reminders that not everything in life has to be rushed. Sometimes, it's worth taking the long way round, especially if there's proper tea, decent conversation, and a beautifully framed window on the world. Thanks for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. If you found this journey through language and luxury thought-provoking, you might want to listen again tomorrow and see what new details you catch. Until then, take care, travel well, and, as we might say in Britain when everything is finally working as it should, that's us all sorted. Cheers for now.